Hello and welcome to the video for the Year 8 Options Evening for Art and Design. So obviously we can't do this in person, which is a shame because it's always lovely to see you and it's always lovely to talk to you about the course and explain the sorts of things that you would do if you opted for art. But it's okay because what we've done is, alongside the basic presentation, which you've got for every subject, we decided to just do a walkthrough of everything that you could produce on this art and design course. Because it's visual, I think it's really important that you can actually see some of the work that you would be doing. So the course structure is on the PowerPoint presentation, so I'm not going to go into that too much. What I'll do is just show you the projects that we currently have planned that we teach. And I say currently because we do tend to change. It doesn't happen very often, and this is for our benefit and your benefit. The more that we teach, the better we get, even though some of us have been teaching for 20 years. Therefore, when we do a scheme of work, as we're teaching it, we will always make slight adjustments. So what I'm going to show you is a guide, but it's not set in stone, and things might be slightly different. The first thing that I want to point out is that we have two methods of presentation. You can present in books, similar to the ones that you can see behind me, and we present on boards, and I'm going to show you both. But I'm going to start off with boards, and what I'm going to show you here is the introduction project, and we have been teaching this for a few years now, and we use this as a way to introduce pupils to the course. We use it to get an understanding of their style and where their strengths lie, and that's important because the next project that you do, you have a choice of two. One of them is very sculpture and pattern and texture based, and one of them is very observational drawing based. And we do this because we think that art should be about the individual and that you should be expressing yourself creatively in a way that's right for you. So it makes sense to offer two different schemes of work that cater for that. So let's go back to the introduction project. So scooch over a little bit and just hold up these boards. Now, this introduction project is quite heavy on observational drawing, but don't let that worry you, because like I said, this is for us to find out what you're interested in and where your skills lie. So this first board here, you'll see that we have some artist research pages. These you will see constantly throughout all projects. So this one is on Peter Randall Page. We have another one down here on Carl Blosfeld. Now these were done in a sketchbook, and this is actually a sketchbook page. And then what we've done is we've cut it and we've placed it onto a board with lots of other work that the student has done. These small studies here, here and here, these are starter tasks. And we do these in the first 5 minutes of a lesson, but they actually prove to be really useful. They're just to kind of get students warmed up, but actually if you go back and you work into them, they can become really beautiful pieces of work. We have more here, 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 here and here. And you can see how they've been used to kind of add to this board. Now this board is from a very high achieving student. So you're looking at a really good high example of work. Don't let that worry you either. We all work at different levels, and for me what's really important is that you do this course and you love it and you enjoy it and you're creative. And I don't really mind if you can't draw as beautifully as this student can, because your creative expertise might lie in a different area. You might be really good at graphics or really good at sculpture, and it's our job to try and tease that out and to nurture that and to get you to explore that as much as possible. Okay, so artist research pages, few starter tasks, and then we have some of these more sustained observational drawings here, and there's some up here. This is a response to this artist just here. So we look at an artist and then we try and find a way of visually responding to that. Once we've explored some black and white, we then go on and we start looking at colour. You can see we do have another black and white observational study here, then we've got a colour one, we start looking at collage, and this is where we're trying out lots of different materials. Up here we have a colour wheel. You will have done this in year 7. We repeat this task to consolidate your knowledge. Again, you'll see some nice little starter tasks just here and another research page, and now you'll see that we're starting to introduce artists that explore colour. And then a final board, this one's slightly smaller, and again some more colour studies using different materials. So we have oil pastel here, we have chalk pastel here, We do some colour wheel explorations of warm and cool colours. And then we have a look at our hue, tint, shade and tone strips. And again, you will have done these in Year 7 and we do them again in order to consolidate your knowledge. So that's the introduction project. First project that you do, depending on whether or not you're doing the 2 or 3 year course, depends how long that takes. And just to clarify that, at the end of both of those courses, you will both have had exactly the same curriculum time. So the next project that we're going to look at is the personal landscape. Now, personal landscape ended up being an amalgamation of 2 projects that we taught for quite some time, and that was identity and landscape. And what we decided to do was to combine these 2 projects into one. So you would cover 2 main areas of art and design, which is portraiture and landscape, and this idea of identity and self. And the identity personal landscape travels further than that. It also encompasses the personal identity of animals, of plant life, of absolutely anything that can own an identity. And the landscape obviously ties in landscapes, beautiful countryside landscapes, but then also urban landscapes and cityscapes. So it covers a huge, huge range of things. And we kind of combine it all together so that you have this really rich and diverse body of work. Now, what I'm going to show you is actually 2 projects, the identity and the landscape, from a student from a few years ago. Now, many of the tasks in here are the ones that you do, but the book's really nicely presented and it shows you most of the work that you will cover. A lot of the identity books that we've had have either all gone home or, because of the pandemic, are currently at home with students, which is why we're using a slightly older one. But don't let that concern you, because like I say, most of what's in here is what you will do. So I'm going to go through this quite quickly, otherwise this video is going to be a little bit long. So we explore features, we look at artist research. So this is one of those artist research pages that on the board you saw as a page, but obviously in here it's still in the sketchbook. So a bit of artist research. We look at cells, and this is in the scheme of work. We have a fantastic, absolutely fantastic little set of work that we do around an artist called David Goodsell, and then we get you to produce this cell page. And I mean, it's really, really beautiful. We look at some lovely kind of textures and patterns, hands, photo shoots of hands. We start looking at Henry Moore. Then we move into animals. This is what I was talking about earlier. Little starter tasks. The starter tasks are always easily recognisable because it's a page, it's divided into 4, and you can see the drawings in each one. Then we look at animal skins. Dave White we always look at because he's such a fantastic artist, and then we do our own response to him, which you can see here. Charlotte Caron. She doesn't actually feature in the scheme of work, but some teachers may choose to bring her back in again. We then look at printing, based on the animal skins that we explored earlier. And then we start looking at final design ideas. And this is where students move off into their own area. And you can see this student has focused on animals and portraits and combined those 2 things together. And this is what we refer to as a mock-up. So this is a little sketch that she's done of her final piece. And this here is that final piece, photographed and evaluated at the end of her project. So that's identity, and then this is landscape. And what you would do is these 2 projects would become one. So we have a nice title page, we look at perspective, we look at this artist here called Anselm Kiefer. That's Valerio Dospina, which is this artist just here, so another artist research page. This student has looked at John Virtue, made some beautiful, beautiful personal responses to his work. We have this buildings page, which features in the scheme of work. We have these beautiful pylons. We do a lovely set of work on these pylon drawings. We then start looking at trees, and again, we do paper cuts, so positive and negative paper cuts. Looking at Fauvism. Again, lovely collage pages. You can see the work starting to develop under this kind of Fauvist theme. Really nice collage pages, some more history of art pages, studies of water, some oil painting we've got coming in here. You can see some beautiful little sketches where the student is starting to work out ideas for the project. More artist research pages. Then she's looking at her final outcome. So she's done a visual mind map to explore different ideas. Lots of little tasters, some secondary sources, lots of primary sources here. Little sketches of possible design outcomes, and then a mock-up of her final piece. So those two books pretty much have everything in that you will study as this combined personal landscape project. And that's what your books can look like when you follow those projects. That said, everybody presents differently. So you might look at that and think, oh, I'm not sure that's really quite my style. That's fine. What we will do is we will try to work with you to develop a style of presentation that works well for you. Okay, so now we move on to the other scheme of work. This is called Develop and Explore. And Develop and Explore, what we try to do is to take you through the kind of creative process in a slightly different way. So there is observational drawing, and you need to be aware of that, but it's very guided, and it's much less than you will find in personal landscape. Okay, so we start off by looking at spheres and cubes, which are on this sheet here. I'll show you that in just a second. And triangles, so turning a circle to a sphere, a square to a cube, and a triangle to a cone. And this helps you to understand about how shading can make an object look three-dimensional. Once you've done that, we then start applying that knowledge to the drawing of an apple, using what we've learned from the sphere, and a pear, using what we've learned from a cone. These drawings then we then take off and we start to explore printing, same as you saw in personal landscape. We also do a lot of pattern-based work. So you'll see here, we have this black piece of paper with these different white circular designs on them. And if I show you this one, you'll see a few more examples of that. So as well as circular designs, we do ones using squares, and we also do some using triangles. Okay? You can see here this student did a little bit of printing using polyboard, and here you'll see the square to cube drawings that this student has completed. Once we've got through that first stage, we then start looking at moving into more three-dimensional techniques. So we do some photographs of some peppers that you can see here at the bottom. Then we do an observational drawing, and then we start looking at this idea of relief sculpture. And relief sculpture is sculpture that comes from a flat surface and builds up. And this is actually made using cardboard and gum strip. So we layer it up using pieces of cardboard, and then we put gum strip over the top before we paint it. So we get this nice kind of sort of half three-dimensional pepper, and we also get to explore this idea of painting, and it's a really nice little introduction into sculpture. At the same time, we'll start exploring using wire. So the apple and pear drawings that we've done, we'll start looking at creating those using wire. And this is kind of highlighting how observational drawings and form can be used to create interesting sculptures. So we've got a pear there, and then here we've got an apple. So really nice, lovely little responses. We'll look at different types of artists, and those different types of artists can often lead us into a direction. So one of the ones that we look at is a guy called Tony Cragg, and you can see here that we've created these fantastic outcomes. So a really old kettle, and then we've taken an old jigsaw puzzle and we've glued it together so it looks like it's spouting out the top of this kettle. And again, really nice, lovely explorations into sculpture that are really accessible, really enjoyable, and most importantly, quite easy to do. So this group also did a little section on Aboriginal art, and you can see some of that here. So some lovely observational drawings of lizards, here and here, a study into Aboriginal art, some responses to Aboriginal art you can see down the bottom here, and then some written analysis. We then moved on and we started looking at lettering and numbering in art. Looking at an artist called Jasper Johns, that's this guy here. This is his work. This one down the bottom is the student's response. And then we start creating these images here, where we take these letters and these numbers and we overlap them over one another, and then we colour in the different sections. Then we look at doing painted backgrounds, and we cut stencils, which are these little things here, and then we stencil them onto the top as a way of responding to that artist. Now, this student really liked this idea, and he decided that this is what he was going to focus on. So, shortly before we had to go back into a lockdown, this student started to explore those ideas on a larger scale. And these will be the explorations that will lead up towards his final piece. And you can see here that he has a painted background, and then he's got these drips of paint coming down, and he's got his letters and numbers stenciled on it. Now, this was informed by another artist that this student had found. That work, unfortunately, is at home with him, so I'm not able to show you. So he took that first artist, Jasper Johns, and he did some explorations in his style. He really liked it. Then he went off and he found another artist that uses letters and numbers in their compositions, and he started to explore their style. And by the time we went into second lockdown, this is where the student had got to. So a really beautiful project, really interesting, really diverse, lots of sculpture, lots of pattern, lots of texture. So really nice things for you to explore. So just remember that on this course, you have those two options, okay? You can do the personal landscape, the two sketchbooks that you saw earlier, or you can move off and you can go into develop and explore. And that is a conversation that you will have with your class teacher. So now you're right towards the end of the course, and we have 2 projects left. The next one you're going to do is a mock exam. And a mock exam is basically exactly as the name suggests. It's a kind of trial run of what you're going to do when the exam board give you your exam paper. Now, things work a bit differently in art. You don't go into a hall and sit for 10 hours and write, but your exam is 10 hours long, okay? But what we do is it's a practical exam. So you come into your art room, it will most likely be the room that you're taught in, and you will come on 2 consecutive days. You will spend 8 school weeks planning, approximately 8 school weeks planning, and then you'll come into the classroom, you'll have all your materials, you'll have your sketchbook, all the planning that you've been doing, and then you will sit and you will make your final outcome. You will be very well supported. You will not walk into that exam not knowing what to do. All of your teachers will work with you to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing when you step into that room, and you'll go through the motions and the process of creating that final piece. So this is the mock exam. As I said, around 8 school weeks. That doesn't include holidays, so it normally ends up being slightly longer than that. The exam is released to you on the 2nd of January, and then you have up until when you do your exam to complete your sketchbook. And your sketchbook is what your sketchbook always is. Now remember, I'm showing you this in a sketchbook, but you could, if you wanted to, put it onto boards. Boards is an option of presentation at any time. You can do the whole course on boards if you want to. So you work through an idea. Now the mock is usually a past paper, and in this case we use fragments. But your actual exam, that is decided by the exam board, and that theme is decided by the exam board, and you will get that theme, as I said, on the 2nd of January. So this is the mock, and this was fragments. So we start off with some magazine collage. We start looking at broken and fragmented objects that you can see here, just some nice observational studies. We start looking at different ways of expressing fragments, not necessarily through observational drawing. So you can see we've got some beautiful paper cut pages. Then we look at this idea of cutting through pages, positive and negative. Then we use shards of different colour paper to create fragmented responses. Notice how it's not all drawing, and I think that's important, because at this point all of you are doing the same thing. So when we do these exam schemes of work, we do try and make sure that you're exploring a real mix of things. Then we start doing a photo shoot of different types of fragmented objects. And then we start finding artists that support the theme. and doing lovely, beautiful research pages on them. Some more observational drawings, and at this point this student is now moving off into her own area. So we're looking at artists. This is a response to cubism. We've got another beautiful response there where we've drawn a picture and then we've cut it up and we've stuck it back together again. Now this student is now into their own idea and they're finding their own artists that they like the look of, starting to explore different subject matter, looking at other artists. This is actually one from earlier on in the project that this student has obviously decided they're quite keen on and they want to look at further. A photo shoot, and then some nice sketches taken from that photo shoot. More detailed sketches, so the student has an option to kind of really demonstrate their style, and this is where they can get awarded lots of marks. You can see this idea starting to emerge. Reference to the artist that we saw earlier in the book, the drawings of the animals that the student has been completing. Now we're starting to look at these stags, and you can see up the top here the student is thinking about different ideas, taking the painting, looking at how to fragment it to fit it within that theme. And then that's it. And I think that is the mock-up of their final piece. So that's what your mock project and your ESA look like. They are basically exactly the same. They take the same amount of time, the same prep period, the same 10 hours will be spent on the outcome. You do the mock so that you have a really clear idea about that time scale of the real exam. And that when you then do the exam, none of it is a surprise and none of it's a shock. It's not a sudden, oh, I've only got 6 weeks left and I desperately need to do this. It's a way of us saying, right, this is what it's going to be like, okay, and getting you mentally prepared for that. And this is why these projects are much smaller than the other projects that you've seen, because that prep period is much shorter. So that's the GCSE art course. Of course, I'm completely biased. I think it's wonderful. I think it's a beautiful thing to have on your timetable. I think it's a lovely environment that we have in the department. We're a fantastic team of teachers. We all work very, very closely together. I think when you come up into this department, you get a real sense of the community that we have up here and the supportiveness of the department. Art itself is just so much fun. We do try really hard to give you an experience that is enjoyable. We hope that our students enjoy being up here and they love the work that they do. I think there is a misconception that art can be very time consuming, but I think all subjects are time consuming. It's just, you know, organising yourself and getting the time to sit and make sure you do your work and your homework. So if you have any questions, please email me at the school. And I'll do my very best to answer anything that you might be worried about or any questions that you might have with regards to the course. And good luck with your options.